What if the world woke up tomorrow to headlines that sounded impossible? Iran declares war. America assassinated Iran's supreme leader. Global markets crashing. Oil prices exploding. Warships mobilizing across the Persian Gulf. Missile systems lighting up radar screens. But here's the real question. Why would the United States take such a dangerous step? Why risk a regional war that could spiral into something much larger? And more importantly, what chain of events could possibly lead to that moment? Welcome to its financial history too. To understand a scenario like this, and why even rumors of it would shake the world, we have to go back decades. Because wars rarely begin with a single strike. They begin with patterns, with pressure, with decisions made long before the missiles ever launch. This is not just a story about Iran and America. It's a story about power, oil, ideology, and a financial system that quietly connects the entire globe. In 1979, everything changed. Before that year, Iran was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a monarch closely aligned with Washington. Iran was a strategic pillar in America's Middle East strategy. Oil flowed. Military cooperation expanded. Intelligence ties deepened. Then the Islamic Revolution erupted. Led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the revolution overthrew the Shah and replaced the monarchy with the Islamic Republic of Iran, a system built around the authority of the supreme leader. From that moment forward, the relationship between Tehran and Washington transformed from partnership to hostility. The U.S. Embassy hostage crisis cemented decades of mistrust. Sanctions followed. Diplomatic ties were severed. Proxy conflicts expanded across the region. At the center of Iran's political structure stands the supreme leader, currently Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the highest authority in the country. He oversees the military, the judiciary, state media, and major strategic decisions. Unlike an elected president, this role represents ideological continuity. It is the core of the Islamic Republic itself. That is what makes the idea of targeting such a figure so explosive. It would not just be a military action. It would be a direct strike at the system's identity. But before imagining that breaking point, we need to understand the battlefield that existed long before any missile strike. Economics. For decades, the main confrontation between the United States and Iran has been financial. Sanctions became the primary weapon. Iranian banks were cut off from global networks. Oil exports were restricted. Access to international trade systems like SWIFT was limited. Iran's economy, heavily dependent on oil revenue, felt the impact. Inflation surged at times. The national currency weakened. Imports became more expensive. Everyday goods were affected. The global oil trade is largely conducted in US dollars. This reinforces America's financial dominance. Countries that operate outside this system often face economic isolation. Iran repeatedly tried to bypass restrictions, selling oil through intermediaries, using alternative currencies, building trade partnerships with China and Russia. Each move triggered a countermove. Sanctions tightened. Iran responded. Cause. Effect. Escalation. Over time, the conflict evolved beyond economics. Direct war between the two nations would carry enormous consequences, so the confrontation shifted into indirect arenas. Iran expanded its regional influence through allied groups in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. The strategy was deterrence through leverage. Meanwhile, the United States increased military deployments in the Persian Gulf and strengthened alliances with regional partners. The nuclear issue became the focal point of global tension. Iran insisted its nuclear program was peaceful. The U.S. and its allies feared potential weaponization. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the nuclear deal temporarily reduced tensions. Sanctions were eased in exchange for strict limits on uranium enrichment. But when the United States withdrew from the agreement in 2018, the cycle restarted. Sanctions returned. Iran increased enrichment levels. Regional tensions intensified. Then came a pivotal moment in 2020. The United States carried out a drone strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, one of the most powerful military figures in Iran. It was one of the most dramatic escalations in decades. Iran retaliated with missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq. The world paused. That event revealed something critical. Red lines were shifting. If a high-ranking military commander could be targeted, what prevents further escalation up the chain of authority? In a hypothetical situation where America killed Iran's supreme leader, the consequences would be vastly greater. The supreme leader is not simply a military official. He represents the ideological foundation of the state. Iran would likely interpret such an act as a declaration of regime-level confrontation. The response would not resemble a traditional invasion. Instead, it would likely unfold in layers: missile strikes on regional targets, proxy attacks across multiple countries, cyberattacks targeting infrastructure, disruption of oil transit routes, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, where a significant percentage of global oil shipments pass daily. Oil markets would react immediately. Prices could spike dramatically. Shipping insurance premiums would rise. Global supply chains would feel pressure within days. History shows the pattern. The 1973 oil embargo triggered global recession. The 1990 Gulf War caused oil shocks. Energy disruptions in Europe in recent years drove inflation worldwide. Energy conflict equals economic shock. And today's global economy is even more interconnected than in previous decades. Higher oil prices affect transportation costs. Transportation affects food prices. Food prices affect political stability. Markets anticipate risk before events fully unfold. Even rumors of escalation can move oil futures within minutes. Investors adjust positions instantly. Currencies fluctuate. Defense stocks rise. The modern battlefield includes expectations and financial reaction. So why would America take such a risk in the first place? In most scenarios, such an extreme action would only occur under extraordinary circumstances, perhaps following a catastrophic attack, direct military confrontation, or a moment where leaders perceive existential threat. Escalation often follows perceived necessity. But necessity itself is shaped by years of accumulated mistrust. Diplomacy frequently attempts to break this cycle. Backchannel negotiations occur. Agreements are drafted, sanctions are offered as leverage. Yet, political changes, domestic pressures, and regional rivalries often derail these efforts. Each failed agreement deepens skepticism. Each breakdown hardens positions. Pressure leads to retaliation. Retaliation increases distrust. Distrust reduces diplomatic flexibility. And the cycle repeats. Modern geopolitics shows similar patterns elsewhere. Major powers compete economically. Sanctions are used as strategic tools. Supply chains are weaponized. Energy routes become geopolitical leverage points. The confrontation between Iran and the United States fits into a broader global shift where economic power and military power are intertwined. The key lesson is not that war is inevitable. The lesson is that escalation has momentum. Over decades, actions once considered unthinkable slowly become precedents. Assassinations, sanctions on entire economies, cyber warfare, proxy conflicts. Each step normalizes the next. There are three critical takeaways. First, wars are rarely spontaneous. They are built over years of policy decisions, retaliation cycles, and failed diplomacy. Second, financial systems are central to modern conflict. Oil markets, sanctions, currency dominance, these shape power as much as missiles do. Third, escalation often happens gradually until a single event appears sudden, even though it was years in the making. The real danger is not one dramatic headline, it is the chain reaction that precedes it. Economic pressure creates instability. Instability invites retaliation. Retaliation risks broader confrontation. Global systems today are deeply interconnected. A conflict involving Iran would not remain contained within one region. Energy markets, shipping lanes, and financial networks would transmit the shock worldwide. The future of such tensions depends less on single leaders and more on whether patterns can be broken. Will diplomacy outpace escalation? Will economic incentives outweigh ideological confrontation? Or will the cycle continue until red lines disappear entirely? If you want to understand where the world is heading, watch the patterns, not just the headlines. Watch the sanctions. Watch the oil flows. Watch the alliances shifting beneath the surface. Because major global crises rarely arrive without warning. The signals are usually there. Most people just don't notice them until it's too late.